From CRI Simple Numbers, this is Profitability Playbook, the Simple Numbers podcast, a podcast for those who champion market growth and anchor the nation's economy, small businesses, and entrepreneurs.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Simple Numbers Profitability Playbook podcast. I'm Mike Maxson, that's Brandon Gray, and guess what, everybody? We have Greg Crabtree back in the house. So long time he's just been on here. He just let me and Brandon take this away. He has no idea what the heck we're talking about. It's been wild on here, all kinds of stuff. How crazy we are. So anyways, Greg, you've been around lately, Australia, and I don't even usually know where you are most of the time. So hey, why don't you give us a little update of what's been going on out there, what you've been hearing, just in your world travels.
Yeah, it's been a busy couple of months of travel. It's kind of, we've had several of our group meetings, that I've met with here in the States and a couple of the industry groups. Also had a presentation to the EO chapter in Dubai, which was kind of interesting, interesting group of businesses. And then actually just got back from Australia and had a group of 8 businesses down there that we met with. One of them was one of our clients, but then the business coach that we worked with down there met with 7 of their businesses. And so really interesting environment. And the first thing to learn is business is business everywhere. The only difference that I would tell you that I see both in like the clients I met with in Dubai as well as Australia, a little bit different capital requirements, but profitability trends, patterns, challenges remain exactly the same.
Real quick, before you go any further, I just got to ask this.
Yeah.
Are they waiting on the election? Are they talking about it?
Absolutely. They talk about, I had more questions about the U.S. election. I'm going through, so I connected through Auckland, New Zealand, going to Australia. And one of the guys in security asked me about the U.S., asked me if I'd voted yet. Wow. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the U.S. election is very much on everybody's mind. So, and I think, the one of the overarching themes is, I think everybody's economy is waiting on, which playbook are they going to see out of the U.S. government in terms of, country direction, country expenditures and initiatives and those things. And so I still am pretty much 100% wired to the belief that we're going to see this economic bump of just people have been pent up waiting for this election to happen. And really, regardless of who wins, I think you're going to see a 6 to 9 month bump. The reality that still has not set in around the world is the fact that, I still keep banging the drum about this issue of we don't understand economics in this current demographic age of shrinking world population, in real terms, and the change of, generations in terms of who's spending, who's producing, all those issues. And you're really starting to see this impact that I think anybody that is doing strategic planning right now, based on how businesses work the last 25 years, is going to be wrong. I mean, they're just going to be flatly wrong about how things are going to work. And you got to look at the market with fresh eyes and say, do I have market opportunity? Do I have the ability to gain market share? Because the market only has a little bit of growth opportunity in it, and only in certain sectors, are we going to see that? But one of the companies that I spent extra time in with Dubai, I mean, they're in a consumable goods, marketplace. They had expanded their business at the end of 22, thinking that the market was going to continue to grow, and they promptly, staffed up, got ready for growth, promptly lost 7% top line. And, and essentially I had to stay over, I had dinner, with that company after the session before my flight was out later that evening, and basically did a little private counseling. And it's like the only choice you have is you have to shrink back to where your demand level is, in those environments. There is no other choice. You cannot manufacture demand until it's known and proven.
So Greg, we've identified in the 100 company model, one of the the things that is driving growth is government spend. So do you see that as prevalent in some of the other places?
To a certain degree, there's always some of that, but I think all of the government seem to be pretty much constrained. The one thing that is interesting that I saw in Australia that I really wish the U.S. would look at. Australia last year opened up 450,000 skilled immigrant visas, which has significantly improved the access to the skilled labor market because they just didn't have access. One of our clients in Australia that is up in the Darwin area, now they do a lot of service of large businesses, facilities, power generation, those kind of things. And so they needed an electrician, could not get an electrician to go to Darwin. And if any of you have ever have any idea what Darwin's climate is like, you would understand why somebody from Australia who knows what Darwin is like don't want to go there. You go there only because you have to, or somebody made you do it. And I can appreciate the people who are there that they're pretty tough. But they were able to get an electrician from Zimbabwe approved in 24 hours to then and fill a key position. And so these are the things that I think if anything, what we need more so than government spending is more so government facilitation of elimination of barriers and constraints. And right now you've got a handful of countries, US, Australia, New Zealand, Canada. I would probably list those four as pretty, nice places that somebody would probably like to go if the opportunity presented itself. If you had a way to get an immediate visa and you had a path to citizenship, in that. And I think the countries that take advantage of still being a desirable place to go be long-term need to take advantage of that, because there's only so much that international labor can do. And I would say conservatively, you guys tell me if you see anything different, from the clients you work with, but I would say easily 50% of my clients that I work with on a regular basis are using some form of international labor to little to even a large degree. But there are only so many things that those people can do, in that process. And so, that is certainly going to be, a critical issue, going forward. But it's still a question of, I still worry, like what we see out of the 100 company model. We're seeing this upstairs, downstairs economy start to really almost fracture. The companies that are necessary, that are able to just continue moving ahead. And so, two of our mastermind groups that we meet with on a regular basis, one of them is an HVAC group, the other one is a group of IT companies. Both of those are necessaries. Now, both are struggling to grow, but for two different reasons. The HVAC companies are struggling to grow because they need a certification of an HV technician. And almost all of them have their own apprentice programs, to grow their own talent. But that group, I did a session with them back in the spring, and I just happened to look back at the last 3 years of the group's data. So it's about $100 million of revenue of the group combined, to look at them as if they're one company. And they were up 66%, but it was a 66% growth. The head count was up maybe 10%. So effectively, you've got 56% inflation from one particular, skill set. But the thing was, when you look down their P&L, everything was up 66%. Their OPEX was up 66%. Their wages were up 66%. Their cost of goods were up 66%. And so they were just maintaining their same rate of pricing. And this is the idiocy of people who have no idea how businesses work. When they talk about, they're price gouging. Really? The first person that says price gouging, is like, are you kidding me? You have no idea of actually how to make a payroll every week. That is a person that is speaking from absolute ignorance, because these companies have to maintain a proper rate of profitability or they cease to exist. And the thing is, as we've seen, even our clients who are the discretionary businesses that are down 15% this year over last year. They have raised their prices as well. Are they price gouging? No, they're raising their prices because they have to do it and reset to the size of the business for their core demand. And so, I mean, there again, I've still yet to meet a politician that I would say actually understands economics or business or taxes. So I'm not going to trust any of them. So, counting in that group that, I don't, unfortunately they impact our lives, but they don't really know what us in the world of business have to deal with on a day-to-day basis.
And what were you ready? Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, I heard someone was at one of my kids' youth events, and they were talking about a service call. And they said the guy was only there 20 minutes and it cost us $150. And I decided I just didn't want to get in the argument. And, part of me was going, well, it was the 20 years experience that allowed him to identify that problem in 20 minutes. And then someone else chimed in. They said, yeah, but you don't realize how much it cost them if they were not at that service call to still maintain that company. And I'm like, that's right. Thank you, sir. Good point.
Hey, Greg, what were your thoughts on the IT companies? I do the group calls on the other group, and you do ones with the others. Just curious to see, because what I'm seeing in them is a very saturated market, difficult on the marketing front with them.
It's tough for them. It's tough for them to grow right now. But I still defend that as a group, they, although they've been given all of the tools to grow in the playbook of how to grow, I think there's still a failure on their part to execute effectively for growth. Because once again, it is the market is saturated, and so they have to go get market share.
Right.
So,
yes, exactly.
Well, because their customer base is flat. So if I was going to interpret our 100 company model, our 100 company model showing up rolling 12 about 5.5%. I really think real inflation is probably somewhere around 7 or 8% for the last 12 months. So effectively what that means is I think we've actually had negative GDP of about 3%, which I think if everybody stops and thinks about it, yeah, that feels about right. Yeah. I mean, but there again, is that bad? I mean, we've said, oh, negative GDP bad, positive GDP good. Well, not necessarily, because here's the thing. We've had positive GDP before when we had 6% unemployment. We got negative real 2 to 3% GDP now, but everybody's got a job that wants a job. Now, it may not be the perfect job you want, but you can go get a job to feed your family. If you're willing to do something unpleasant, smelly, hard, difficult, work a little overtime, work a swing shift, there's a job.
There are still more job openings than there are people on unemployment.
Well, I had a conversation with a client the other day. I thought it was massively entertaining. I said that I feel that again, I know we have some labor shortage issues. I get that piece of it, and we'll come down the line. But I think we have a big mismatch of labor in America too, which is why immigration's an important role. But if you look at our schools, what kids major in and stuff like that, just like we talked about HVAC, those type of jobs, it's like we're not pushing the workforce there. It's like, why are we still graduating thousands of graphic designers every year and not?
Those are shifting. I think there actually is a move afoot that you were starting to see. Younger kids start to address the trades because the trades are paying really good right now.
Oh yeah,
in that, and so, but it'll be one of those that we'll see how that plays out across time. There was a stat, Wall Street Journal had an article a couple of weeks ago talking about this was the highest amount of terminations of first-year hires of Gen Z that they've ever seen. And so one of the things that is a challenge right now is also those people coming out of college with college degrees, they're struggling in the workforce. Part of it is they are coming into a softer part of the economy that as businesses look to make sure that they hit their labor efficiency numbers for direct labor, those people are quick to be on the cutting line, as people have faced that. But like I said, at the end of the day, it is one of those where we've seen more businesses adapt to what is the market giving you right now. And so, the ability to go affect the market, people have finally been exposed of saying, when you were doing all of these, scale your business, grow your business, and do all this stuff, and you would grow your business, you were thinking you were affecting the market. And the reality was, no, you're not. The market's just giving you a gift. I guarantee you, if you get past it and look back at it, I honestly believe if you take 2009 to 2019, that is the greatest amount of economic growth, real growth in U.S. history's economy. I mean, that period was just on fire. But as soon as we hit 2019, boom, ran out of labor permanently. And it's going to be the slow drift downward now. And can businesses adapt to this downward decline and yet stay profitable? And that is a different management technique that, and as we see in the 100 company model, people in the downward mode more quickly adapt to their direct labor signature that they need, but they're not cutting management labor as fast as they need to. And this, if anybody listening to this is struggling with your business, there's only one number you need to go focus to. You need to go look back when you were at your best in management labor efficiency, and you got to cut management labor to get back to that number. Yeah, line people up. Who can you trade? Who can you do without? Totally restructure how you manage. All of those things are on the table. It's almost like the scene, realistically, those are the businesses that you need to go back to the scene out of Apollo 13. And in that scene, when they were trying to figure out how to adapt the air filter from the command module to the limb, the engineers come into this conference room and throw a basket of stuff on the table and say, we've got to figure out in 60 minutes how to take what's on the table is everything that they have in the command module that you can work with. We got to figure out how to fix this, and we got 60 minutes to do it. That's the problem that businesses that are in that downward mode need to look at, because even with the bump that I'm talking about post-election, it's not going to fix a bloated management labor structure relative to the volume the market's giving you in contribution margin.
Yep.
I mean, we're
Band-Aid at best.
Now, we're going to see a little bit of a bump in retail consumable items, but not enough to really fix your business. Because realistically, I mean, just think about it. I mean, we're still at an all-time, personal debt high. No matter the energy that's in that economic bump, it's more going to be in the business to business activity, not in the individual consumer, part of the market. And I think people will still feed off of that energy a little bit, but they're still going to be constrained by credit, from that standpoint. So we'll see. But I really do believe we're at a sea change similar to, Jack Welch in the 90s eliminated middle management at GE, and that became the trend. We're now to a new, I think, point that we've got to really rethink management structures, because you just don't have the dollars in your management structure to be, to spend the money that you were spending, because the market's not giving you the margin, coming out of it.
And people ain't getting cheaper. I mean, they're not asking for less money when you go to hire them. So, I mean, and that 100 company model shows that too. That number's continuing to go up as well on the labor side. So.
And once again, contrary to both parties seem to think that they can bring inflation down. I got news for you. No, they can't. Now, we're going to continue to see inflation on a pretty steady basis, and we could see some significant spikes. I mean, if really, and once again, you go back and look at 21 was the most massive inflationary spike. I would probably, based on our data of the clients that we see, I would say that 21 was at least a 21% inflation year.
Well, we printed two U.S. economies at one time.
That it doesn't have an impact. And granted, I mean, I think if there is, some massive government spending, and you got a little different mindset depending on which part of it goes in, but at the end of the day, I mean, I think we'll be where, in terms of the core economy itself, those things are just not going to be there. And with a constraint of labor, then, you just got to work with what you got and then find a way. And if I can't get that margin, I've got to go back to the drawing board and throw all the pieces out on the conference room table and bring in pizza and say, guys, we got to fix this. And we got this amount of time. And let's get it done.
Well, as you dissect that management labor spend further, two teams in particular I see that are really challenged are sales and marketing.
Right.
We talk a lot about deal makers versus deal takers, and I'm seeing folks kind of finally wake up and go, you know what? They're a deal taker. I got to make a change, because they're just not going to be able to get past the objection. They're not going to be able to deliver our value proposition in the right way. And same thing with marketing, in terms of if you got team members that have been just kind of wash, rinse, and repeating for the last 4 or 5 years, they're stuck in the mud. They're not going to get out of it, because the plays they're running are no longer effective to the same level they once were.
Well, talking about marketing in particular, the thing that I've raised a few eyebrows, and I mean, like I said, what do I know? I'm just a chicken farmer from Alabama, so take this for what it's worth. But I will probably make a prediction that Google will make little to nothing, substantially zero from paid search in 24 months. Now, I know that's a bold statement, but think about it. I mean, why would anybody pay for promoted search if everybody adopts an AI search engine? Yeah. I don't want influence search if I'm a smart consumer. And I think AI search engines will be the fastest adoption of technology that we've seen in our lifetime. And as people start to become accustomed to that and aware of what it means, so the only way that Google, keeps any paid search revenue is going to be, finding some way to kind of convince people, oh, this is still better than what you were using. And I think that's going to be somewhat questionable, that they'll be able to do that. But then also what we've seen on the other side of that is the fact that, almost hands down, that, all of our clients are struggling with marketing effectiveness through any type of social media channel. I mean, we're not saying turn it off completely, but I mean, I think you've got to try some different things. And as you said, Brandon, about the human salespeople, I think what we've seen is a reintroduction of the need of the human to get the lead across the finish line. Right. And those humans that seems to have been most effective that are filling those roles now are not people that are traditionally trained as a salesperson. They actually seem to be more effective than the people that walk in with a sales playbook the dialing for dollars, just call people and say, hey, I do cleaning. Do you need some cleaning services? Yeah. That doesn't get it. I mean, you've got to find a way to get out there and connect with the marketplace. And those are the ones. And once again, I think that's the reason why, like our IT guys, they've struggled because they still struggle with that human sales process.
Yes.
And when I was talking to that group, I said, listen, before we merged our firm and had to deal with our own IT, I said, we had 5 different IT companies over the life of the firm. None of them ever knocked on my door. None of them. So as an industry, they still struggle with this idea of connecting and getting out into the marketplace, and finding, how do you search for that target customer who you're looking for.
Hey, Greg, my biggest growing IT companies are the ones that are living at conferences, associations, some sort of networking event that are out there in front. And that's where they've channeled their marketing dollars and they've seen more success. But to everyone listening, right before we had this recording, Brandon and I we're talking about forecasting and planning for 2025 and things to look at. One of the things on our strategic questionnaire that we ask is around like, hey, do you have your own internal marketing person, or do you have a marketing strategy and things like that? Part of planning for 2025 is what Greg said, like, hey, are you actually looking at it that way, analyzing the market, analyzing your customers, analyzing the strategy you're going to do, and then really taking a hard look to make those decisions, because again, things are going to be massively different in the market for 2025 and beyond.
Yeah. And once again, you got to look at your industry, and make those assessments. As I look at, kind of some of our other groups, and I'd spoke at a contractor summit of landscaping contractors and fairly decent size. These are guys that go out and do a lot of hardscape, those type of landscaping projects and such. And they were all, fairly muted in terms of growth, but there's that continuing core demand, of what's there. And so I think, what you have to learn there is just, make sure that every project, everything that you do, you're profitable with it, and you adjust profitability relative to what that market gives you. And pretty much I would say what you've probably seen in revenue activity for the last 6 months is probably a good representation of the core demand. And so one of the things that I've been cautioning people about going forward, so if we do see this post-election bump, just really, really, really try to hold off adding any labor, direct or management, as best you can to get back to that perfect operating ratio, maybe even run it a little hot first, because I think this bump is not going to be permanent. I think it's going to peter out in about 6 months to 9 months. And then all of a sudden now you're hard cutting, back to where you were. And I think you've got to resist thinking that this growth is going to be permanent, because the catalysts are just not there. And that's still not taking into account anything happening globally, from a China implosion to conflict in shipping channels, both Asia as well as Middle East and all those kind of things. Those things just, put you in a totally different planning level, what you need to look at. But even if business kind of continues on, in a relatively, calm environment, last time I checked, there's 2 kernels that are needed: supply and demand. Well, if I have an increased supply, but there's no more people to buy from me, all of a sudden that drops, and you don't have an ability to cut that price to get more demand, because then you become unviable as a business. You can't even begin to operate.
Well, Greg, one more thing, Mike, we were talking, he had a great thing of the true rate of unemployment, and it's the Ludwig Institute, and it looks at the true rate of unemployment at 23.9%, because it factors in that does not have a full-time job, so less than 35 hours a week, but wants one, has no job, or does not earn a living wage conservatively pegged at $25K. And I said, obviously you can analyze those statistics, and I'm sure some people can poke holes in those, and I get it. But even at 23.9%, if they're looking at it that way, that's a quarter of the population that doesn't have any buying power right now. I mean, how do you see that as an issue?
I mean, it's certainly a drag. I mean, certainly as you get more of an impact of government services. So one of the things, in these immigration policies, so like the idea being, like in Australia's sense of using that skilled worker immigrant visa, that's just for that person. That doesn't give that person the ability to bring their family over who would use government services and not contribute. So and if you really think about it from an economic standpoint, it is the best deal in the world to get somebody between the ages of 20 and 30 that already has a skill set and have them come in and start working and paying into the system, because I didn't have to pay to get them from 0 to 20. And I don't have any, I'm getting them at the prime operating, contributing, and both as a consumer and as a producer, of that. And there really needs to be some economic focus on bumping up that part of the marketplace. Now there's a downside to the people that are already here. It will suppress wage growth in that sector. I get that, but there again, you just compete. Get out there and be the person, because those are the people that are pretty much have room to escalate, through a career and progress. But really, until we have an excess, I still have yet to see an excess of labor in any geography or any category to any meaningful degree yet. Now, most of our clients are telling us, yes, there's some availability, but it's like, you're still scraping the bottom of the barrel, in terms of, and every now and then you kind of catch, a good person. Still, the best employees that people are hiring are people that come from another existing job, not someone who's unemployed, for the most part.
Well, awesome. Well, hey, great talk. What's crazy is that the next time we get on one of these, we'll have a new U.S. president, and we'll have a whole host of things to talk about from there in terms of where's it going, what's it looking like, and I'm sure our clients will be pounding us with questions as well. So, Greg, Brandon, anything else before we sign off?
It's going to be an interesting ride. So my hope is whoever wins, there's just not a dispute. What what none of us can afford is, any, lingering length of conflict over who actually got elected. And hopefully that's my main hope, that, as entrepreneurs, we'll work with whoever we got, that it kind of is what it is. The one thing that I do like about seeing economies and traveling around the world and talking to entrepreneurs from all over is the amazing, number one, anybody listening to this from the U.S., count yourself lucky. We have the best, most actionable economy in the world. So don't even think about looking elsewhere. I mean, our opportunities are massive, compared to the rest of the world. We have the least amount of capital required to start any kind of business on a comparative basis to anywhere else in the world. And our opportunity for profitability is better than anywhere else in the world for the most part. But if we just take advantage of that, no matter who is in office, and it's less, just remember, it's not about the presidency, it's the president, the House, and the Senate. It's those things together in terms of how those effectively govern. That's going to really set the landscape in terms of what you can affect as a business, and how, and you just need to, have a game plan of how you can work. Now, if you are aligned to one particular interest or another, that's no different than having one major customer that your life builds around. I mean, you've intentionally seeded your risk. And so I tend to be more of a broader market, fan and advocate. So, hey, I don't want one dominant customer. I don't want one dominant sector of where I try to do business. And that's my choice, because I want to limit my exposure risk, wherever I can.
Awesome. Brandon, real quick, so I don't forget this time, about the offer.
Yeah. So as a kind of thank you for listening to the podcast, if you'll contact Mike, if you're interested in either our fast track profit session or in one of our regular planning sessions that we offer, he can tell you the difference between the two. But you get a 20% discount on that. That's through the end of November. So you need to act pretty quick, because once this is out and about and on the air and you've listened to it, the time will be ticking. So like I said, give Mike a shot. Be sure to mention it, because Mike says a lot of things and talks to a lot of people. And so you'll have to remind him of it.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks everyone. You have a good one. We'll be seeing you soon.
All right. So
Take care, guys.
Bye.
If you want to know more about driving sustainable profitability for your business, or are interested in learning more about CRI Simple Numbers, please visit our website at simplenumberscri.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of Profitability Playbook, the Simple Numbers podcast. You can subscribe to Profitability Playbook on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you prefer to listen to podcasts. If you liked what you heard today, please leave us a review. The views expressed on Profitability Playbook, the Simple Numbers podcast, are those of the presenter and moderator and do not necessarily reflect the views of CRI Simple Numbers or the CRI family of companies. This podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to replace professional advice received directly. Consult with your CRI Simple Numbers advisor or another trusted professional if you have questions about your specific situation.